I always had this dream to have a vineyard and winery someday. It took me about 40 years, but I was able to purchase a vineyard and winery.
All right, you all. Hey, welcome back for another episode of The Necessary Entrepreneur. I think we're going to be smiling the entire time. If it isn't good to listen to, just watch this guy because he's got smooth and clean lines all over his life. I'm sure if we discover the past 55 years, I'm sure it isn't always built that way. But the outcome seems like an idyllic place to be. So today's guest is Ron Rubin. He's the CEO of the Republic of Tea, one of the most distinctive and purpose-driven brands in the beverage world. Ron's also the author of Gold in Our Backyard. It's a book about leadership, culture, and discovering extraordinary value in places most people overlook. His perspective on entrepreneurship is thoughtful, long-term, and deeply human, which makes him the perfect guest for The Necessary Entrepreneur. Ron, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm honored to be on your show.
I'm honored to talk to you, man. I think this is going to be a nice moment here for me to learn and for me to grow and to do some deep dives on what 50 years of building your dream.
Thank you.
Yeah, has been. Today the newest thing is the Republic of Tea and your book of Gold in Our Backyard. But you've had 3 to 4 businesses. You've been an entrepreneur, a lifelong entrepreneur. You've been an adjunct professor in MBA programs at universities. You've lived a heck of a life.
Thank you.
Can you break this married for 50 plus years? Can you break this life down into simplicity, the way that your life has evolved and what you built? Is it simple how you can explain 5 decades of this life?
Well, I think it's simple to the fact that I started with mentors. My dad was my mentor. And I think having mentors in your life, in your business, really helps you succeed. And I think that if you don't have any mentors who've been there, done that, can help bring you through, I think that's really been a key for me all through my career and all through my life. The second thing is I read a tremendous amount of books. I read business books. And I'm reading about all these successful entrepreneurs and, what did they do to make themselves successful? And I think I never received an MBA degree, but my MBA degree was reading over 1,500 business books over, my whole career. I had a goal of 50 books a year, a book a week. And I enjoyed it. I learned so much from their stories. So I think really to break it down simple is really having a mentor and reading, and educating yourself. I could go on with some other, but that's simplicity at its best.
Yeah. What do you think? I mean, imagine the lessons that you've learned from those 1,500 books. How do you think that practically applies to the in and out of the daily environment being an entrepreneur?
Well, I can take those lessons that I might learn in that book and apply them to our own business, whether it's the tea company or the winery, and, and incorporate that business that lesson into our business. And so it's really, one of the lessons I learned about having a personality profile test for all the employees that you were going to hire. We never had anything like that. And I discovered that about this company called Caliber, and we've used it for the last 30 years. I read about strategic planning. People talk about it, but, 30 years ago, there weren't too many people talking about strategic planning. But I learned about strategic planning from reading in a book. And so what I do is try to apply the lessons. One of the lessons I just applied from reading a $1 trillion coach was lowlights and highlights. And when we have our board meetings, we always start with the lowlights. Everybody starts with the highlights, but we start with our lowlights. How did I incorporate that? From a book that I read. So I think taking little nuggets and applying them to your business or your life and is really helpful.
Do you feel that they've all compounded? The origin of the question is, do you pick one up and use it now and set it down and go get another one, or do they all compound to this? Yeah,
exactly. Just what you said, Mark. They all compound. You bring them in and then you use them for a number of years. We've used strategic planning for about 30 years. And when I bought the winery, I never had a winery before, but one of the first things we did was strategic planning for the winery. You know, I learned in a book about, having a byline or a message, under your brand name. And we never had one at the Republic of Tea. And I learned that we should have one. We had one. We created one, leading purveyor of premium teas. And that's what we're all about, leading purveyor of premium teas. So I buy the winery. It's called River Road Family Vineyards and Winery. Doesn't have a tagline. And our team comes up with a tagline, a beautiful experience. And so we use that. We want you to have a beautiful experience, whether you come visit us or you try our wine in your home. We want it to be a beautiful experience. And so you incorporate those ideas that you learn, and you can take them from one business to the next business.
I bet that to you, details matter.
Sure, they matter.
So as I tell you why I know that details matter to Ron, I'll let you go into why they matter. I opened up this awesome package that you sent to us with your book and with tea in it. But I opened it up, and the packing, I went, these are tea bags.
That's correct.
That is a detail down to the finite principle of what you're building.
Thank you. Sure, we think about all that. I read this book, Shut Up and Listen. Okay. And they talked about the last 5%. And it ended up, what they meant is businesses get 95% correct. What they do, they have the systems in place, but it's that last 5% that's going to make a difference. And so when we design what you received as with the book, we had trouble taking the book out of the box. And if you look at that box real close, you're going to see there's a little place for your finger to lift that book out of the box. Do you see that?
Yep.
So when we originally designed it, that wasn't there. And so what we call that the last 5%. So I think business entrepreneurs and owners, they should focus in on that last 5%.
Should we focus on the last 5% after we're in the business? And I ask that because I see too many people waiting too long to make it perfect before they start. But maybe you would counter that. But it seems like some people never start because they're worried about the last 5%.
Well, I think you have to start. Any entrepreneur wants to start, but I think you just have to keep that in the back of your mind. Let's get 95% correct first, and then we're going to move to that last 5%.
A constant improvement. So you mentioned before we jumped on, I asked you, about your travels, and I mean, you get to live in 3 different places throughout the year, but you mentioned about going to China, and I'm assuming that was to find the best tea. It tends to be in China and Taiwan.
That's
right?
correct.
Yep. What'd you take back from? I'm always interested in what I bring back from cultures. It could be another city within our country. It might be another country. It could be a continent away. But you can't go much further than Asia from where we are. Is there something that impacted you there that you saw that you could really bring back to even grow and build a better life?
Well, what I did see and what made the difference in my life, in our businesses and also personal life, was learning about feng shui. The flow of energy, water and wind, placement. And I learned that in China. And I just fell in love with that concept. But the way I really learned about it was picking up as many books as I could read about feng shui to understand. And then we were able to use a feng shui architect to design not only our home, but our business, the Republic of Tea. We use a feng shui architect for River Road Family Vineyards and Winery. And we have really tried to educate our team what feng shui is all about. And so the placement of just the colors that we use, the way the desks are set, the design, the flow. When you walk into the winery, it's a curved road, not a straight road. I mean, it's just, and we try to educate not only our team, but our customers. So I would say feng shui was really a life-changing learning lesson for me going to China.
What do you have to do to be open-minded to embrace that and see those moments, though? This applies to traveling. It applies to business through growth. How were you positioned to recognize that and to be interested and take it away?
Well, I worked for my dad for 17 years till he passed away. And he had this expression, gold in your backyard. And the expression that he used meant that when I came back to work for him in Southern Illinois, I felt, Dad, there's no way that, I'm going to I have college friends that went to Chicago, they went to New York, they went to LA. There's no way somebody in Southern Illinois, is going to be as successful. And my dad would say, there's gold in your backyard. You just have to dig deep enough. And so I think what he did is he helped train me look for those opportunities. And you know where the opportunities are? They're in your backyard.
What's that metaphor? What's that metaphor mean? What does it really mean?
It really means look where you are today. Successful, where you started. You didn't have to go to New York to be a real estate broker and become successful. You didn't, you took the opportunity that was right in front of you, right where you were. And I think that that's what it means. Now, today, a lot of the young adults, they go off to college, and the last place that they think that they want to come back is their hometown. I think it's the first place they should come back. It's like, it's right there. Well, I'm not coming back home. I mean, we can't do anything. I can't be successful back home, but you can be. It's right there in your backyard. You just have to dig deep enough.
What's special about back home in Southern Illinois to you? Is this I have a mentor person that I spend time with now that was a little ahead of me in business. He was from Cape Girardeau.
Yeah, sure. I lived in Cairo, Illinois. We would go to Cape all the time. But I think what's special, of course, is the people. I mean, they're hardworking. They came up on a farm. They appreciate. A lot of times we could leave the doors unlocked. It just small town. You knew everybody. Everybody tried to take care of each other, and just it was a little slower pace. Not the big city, but anyway, it's just calm, peaceful.
Well, technology's brought the big city to all of our doorsteps, hasn't it?
Sure has. But I enjoy it. My new assistant is ChatGPT. I mean,
you all have a great relationship, huh?
We have a great relationship. I thank ChatGPT every time I put in something and tell them how great they are. And
do they ever tell you something you don't want to hear?
Well, I think they give me some information that I'm not agreeable with at times. I don't know if it's not that I don't want to hear, but they, they give me I have different opinions than they do at times.
So what do you do with it? How do you interact with it then? Do you keep going? Do you have a conversation? Do you leave it alone and come back? How do you interact?
I think the interaction, what I've learned going to some seminars, is the more detail you can be and put in the information. It's like, that expression, what, garbage in, garbage out, or something like that. It's like if I could type something for maybe 200 or 300 words and really give them what I'm searching for or what the answers I need or what we're all about, you're going to get to me, it works better. I get a better reply.
When you were an adjunct professor at St. Louis University, when you look back on that time, what was your takeaway? I'm assuming you don't do that anymore.
No, I don't do it anymore.
Okay. What was your takeaway in your quiet moments, not, outside of the students, and you sit down in an office? What was your takeaway from that time?
Well, I think the takeaway was being able to teach students from someone that was personally involved in business. For example, I talked to them about the importance of no debt, running a business. Then you can run your life with no debt, and really talking about debt. We talked about innovation. I talked about the finest business book ever written. Do you know which one that is?
You're about to tell me.
The Little Engine That Could.
I love it.
I think I can. I brought some, if you got a minute, I'll tell you a story from that. Yeah. I brought some toy cars, railroad cars, the engine.
Yeah.
And I gave them out to all of our students. And I'm sitting there just waiting. Now, do you know what you did when you were a little kid and you got a toy? Somebody gave you.
I'm instantly playing with it.
You're playing with it. I mean, you're playing with it.
Yep.
And it's like, where did that go? That's what I'm trying to teach them. Where did it go? And then I said, okay, you guys can unwrap it. I don't have to tell you to unwrap it. And then I'm waiting for them to play with it. Nobody's playing with it. Finally, we got one brave student starts playing with it. You know what he starts to do? Choo choo, choo choo. And it's like, you just see that you've lost that. You lost that. And I'm trying to bring it back, And so that was important. I also tried to teach them that, if you're on time, you're late. And how important it was to be on time. And in Gold in Your Backyard, you'll read a story. I'm not proud about it, but I set the guidelines that if you're late to my class, you're going to get fired. It's just that simple. Trying to teach them how business works. And of course, we had one individual that came late that didn't have an excuse, and he got fired. And he said, well, I'm going to go to the dean and I can't graduate without your credits. Well, I called the dean first and I said, listen, this is where the rules, this is, business. If you want to have him come back, it's not going to be in my classroom, and the next week, everybody shows up about 10 or 15 minutes early. And then I let them out 10 or 15 minutes early, which they're happy about. But, trying to set a little discipline, trying to tell them what the real world's about, tell them stories, what no debt, learning, just business. So I enjoyed it. It was fun.
Do you know what that person became?
Have no idea.
It'd be interesting.
But I know that there are some that were in my class that have been very successful.
That you stay in contact with, that have a strong connection. Yeah. Of all these businesses, do you have a favorite one? It might be asking you like which one of your kids is favorite. I don't care. I'm going to ask the question. I'm allowed to ask whatever question I want. So do you have one of the favorites?
Well, when I grew up and went to the University of Illinois, my last year, I knew I was going into our family wholesale wine and liquor business. And an individual told my dad, well, Ron should go to the University of California at Davis and study viticulture and enology. And so my senior year, I drove out to California and studied viticulture and enology at UC Davis. And I fell in love with Northern California. I fell in love with the wine country. I fell in love with the product wine. My wife and I fell in love together out there. And it just became, I always had this dream to have a vineyard and winery someday. And what happened, it took me about 40 years exactly from 1971 to 2011, but I was able to purchase a vineyard and winery. And I think that happened because I had a heart problem or issue that at age 60 that really woke me up and said that nobody promises you tomorrow, you know, and you have to seize the day. And when I survived from this heart issue, I told my wife, I said, I want to start looking for that vineyard and winery out in California. So I guess, I enjoyed that. I enjoy that business very much. I also enjoy the fact that our son Todd is running the Republic of Tea now. So, I'm very proud of what he does. He's the Minister of Evolution and President, and he's done a tremendous, great job. Our daughter Julie, she's an entrepreneur. She's a speech language pathologist. So, I think for me, I think the wine business is something I dreamed about. I'm doing it now, and I really love it.
So you love both of your kids' businesses.
You bet.
I get it. That churns up a question in me around this idea that once you own the winery, was it as sweet as the pursuit of trying to own it?
It's sweet. I think it was sweet because I set goals. And so there was an opportunity to look at that winery and say, we're doing about 20 to 25,000 cases of shipments. Can we reach 100,000 cases? Can we grow that business? And that's what our goal was. It took us 8 years, but we made it. And so I think it was a big challenge. It's taking a business and growing it. So I would say yes. When I bought the Republic of Tea in 1994, my first goal there was how fast could I pay off Southwest Bank in St. Louis, Missouri, the money that I borrowed to buy the company. And that took me 6 years, 3 months, and 15 days. And since June 15th of 2000, the Republic of Tea has been a debt-free company. And the winery, when I bought it, saved the money for 40 years, we became a debt-free company. And so why? Because my dad taught me that. He taught me how to run businesses and how to grow a business, and we're talking about a small family business. I mean, I understand if you want to go public, and I understand if you want to be on the stock exchange, but, what makes up the economy in the United States, in my opinion, is all the small businesses that we have in the United States.
Yeah, yeah. Do you think a business, does it ever get to the point where growth isn't essential? So you built it from the 20 to 25,000 cases to 100. Because we hear this like if you're not growing, you're falling behind.
I think so. I think my 3 favorite words are sell, sell, sell. And I think it's top line revenue that really helps the day, And so for me, it's always been a challenge. Now, how do we take that 100,000 cases to 200,000 cases?
As a man, it's speaking my language.
And so that's where we are now. And it's not going to be a straight path. It's going to be kind of a zigzag path, up and down, but you hope over time you're going to reach it. So, some years it's just, COVID came around, and what can we do about that? I mean, you just have to realize, it's going to have a big effect on your business. And so then the next year you just try to continue to innovate, trying to look for opportunities and to grow your business. So I think growth has to be number one.
Yeah. What have you done? COVID's a perfect example, but I bet over 50 years of business, there's been multiple moments that you didn't foresee, that were massively challenging, that you didn't have the solve prepared for. What'd you do in those moments? What do you reflect on that this was the approach? Were they all different? Did you have to rely on a different set of skills, or is it a singular approach that every time something like that happened?
Well, in the book, Gold in Your Backyard, I have a lesson about pivot. I know you hear that word and it's kind of a slang word, but really in business, you do have to pivot at times. I'm going to give you kind of a real quick answer if you don't mind. I write Gold in Your Backyard. We can distribute it. We can sell it. We have a warehouse. We can ship it. And we start doing that for 6 months. And I realize that I have to go to Ingram. I have to play their game. If we want to get this book out there in distribution, I thought we could do it ourselves through the Republic of Tea, but I learned not going to work. And so did I want to change? Not really, but I realized for the best, I had to pivot. I had to change, so you see those things and you just go a different direction. Now, when I bought the Republic of Tea, we wanted to be a specialty tea company and not mass. And so mass market. And so I think you come to a fork in a road that you're either going to be, in my opinion, you're either going to remain specialty or you're going to go mass. And you can't do both with a brand. And we decided to stay specialty. Now, we've been a specialty company for over 30 years. This is our 34th year. And so we're not going to change. We're not going to pivot. We're going to stay right in that lane we want to be. That's where we want to be, specialty.
And I guess that's your own personal reasons, philosophies, what your goals are for the business, how you make those decisions, right?
Yeah, but we have 150 or more families that rely on their livelihood with the Republic of Tea. When I pull into the parking lot and I see all these cars, the first thing I think about is, your team, that they're given so much time of their life. Why don't you have the strongest company that you can? We want to provide for these families. So anyway,
do you operate these companies with the same principles and same values, or do those evolve separately within whatever culture's built?
Well, at the Republic of Tea, we have a mission to enrich people's lives through premium tea, education, and innovation. So when I bought the winery, we only had to change one word. We enrich people's lives through premium wine, education, and innovation. So we took the same DNAs, the same principles, and we applied it to another business.
Mm-hmm. Do you think you could take that and your son, if he were to do it and continue on the pathway, do you think you could apply this to almost any business? Or has it worked in the beverage space because that's what you came up in?
Well, I think any business, to the extent that I think education is a key and innovation is a key. So not only do you have to educate your team, but you have to educate your customer, and then you have to innovate. The other thing I might say is I had a mentor tell me there's only 3 keys to success in business. And I thought, wow, now I'd like to hear about that. So, Mark, do you want to hear the 3 keys to success in business?
Not just me. You've got us all on pins and needles. We all want to hear it.
Well, the first key is customer satisfaction. Okay. If you can't satisfy your customer, you're not going to have a business. It's all about satisfying your customer satisfaction. The second key is employee satisfaction. Okay. Because if you can't satisfy your team, you don't pay them enough, and you just don't have the right fit and the right people, you're not going to have a successful business. So employee satisfaction. So you have to have customer satisfaction, you have to have employee satisfaction, and you're ready for the third key, final key, cash flow. That's it. These are the lessons that you find in Gold in Your Backyard.
Why is cash flow so important? I don't want to skip over the first 2 because those are fundamental. I mean, I think people listening to the first 2, anyone who's even not an entrepreneur, this term entrepreneur, that's an employee that works in, they would agree with those 2.
Mm-hmm.
The third is high level, C-suite, entrepreneurial, director level. They understand this, but not everyone does. Why is cash flow? Because you didn't say profit. You didn't say gross margin. You didn't say net. You said cash flow.
Well, cash flow, a lot of people don't understand it. Entrepreneurs need to have a cash flow report every week. I get one every Wednesday. I've gotten it for a number of years. It's the heartbeat of the business. You have so many entrepreneurs I know today start a business. They go out and they get a big sale from Target or whomever, Walmart or whoever it is. And then they need to go buy more material or more items, more supplies, and they're waiting for their money. They don't have any money. They get strung out, and it's like, it's that cash flow that's the heartbeat, the energy of your business. And you have to learn what that's all about. And you do a cash flow projection for the next 4 weeks. The money coming in and the money going out. That's the heartbeat of the business.
That's on my mind. I can't tell you how many times a day. It's number 1 in the forefront of my brain.
Yeah.
Because everyone on our team understands that 1 and 2 have to happen or we don't have a business.
Right.
But the third one is a separate parallel idea that if we don't have that, we don't have a business either, but it's a total separate category.
That's correct.
But it is, what I've told people? I said, here's how I can explain cash flow. It allows me to make my mistakes and keep going.
Mm-hmm. That's good.
It just does, because it just eliminates the worry. It allows me to take on more risk than almost anybody around me, because I just know the lifeblood is I'm not taking it for granted because I built the thing over years, but I see what's happening over the next 30, 45, 60, and 90 days. And I realize if these things don't go well, I realize that if we do spend money in this area, I understand what's going to keep us going and moving forward. And I love profit. I do, right? But profit's a short-term distraction for the business. What are you going to do with profit? What am I going to do with it? Go buy something, make my life a little bit better. I mean, reinvest. Yeah, that's fine. But cash flow is the lifeblood. It is the heartbeat and the blood in your body. If that's not working, doesn't matter what other organ's going on.
That's correct.
Right. Yeah.
And you need to be on top of it, just like you said. You know what the next 2 or 3 months are going to look like. And you need to get a statement every week. And, I preach cash flow statements. I teach that, and I taught that in my class.
But I had to learn it. To your point, it was important for somebody to hear today and hear that for you, or listen to their adjunct professor. It's important to hear, but until you're in it, you don't really know what it feels and what it looks like. Right. Because I think also what it's allowed me to do is it allows me to make the right decisions for the business. Right? What expenditures look like? Can we invest in this? Do we need to push that off till the next quarter? And then if you don't like where your cash flow's at, if it has limiting aspects to the company, then make some changes on sales.
There's a number of things in my book, The Gold in Your Backyard, that you won't find in an MBA class. And one of the things I'd like to mention to you for your listeners and leaders to hear is that I'm a big proponent of term life insurance. Okay? Especially if you're starting a new business, especially if you take on a lot of debt, that you can relatively buy term life insurance that will help your family, and God forbid something happens in case of emergency. It won't strap your wife or whatever, whomever, with your debt that you might have taken on for, being an entrepreneur. And for me, it was just, it just helps you sleep a lot better at night, knowing God forbid something would happen, that this bank is going to be paid off. There's going to be enough money for our kids' college education. You won't have to worry about the mortgage on your house, and your car payment because of term life insurance. And I'm really a big proponent of that.
Good for you. Did you learn that prior to having this heart moment at 60?
Oh, you bet. And I learned after having it, I couldn't get any further insurance.
There you go. So make sure before you have the heart problem, you have the ability to earn a high amount of cash flow.
That's correct.
What do you love most about business? What do you love?
Well, I learned it's a learning experience. Every day I learn something new. So it's exciting. It's, we're in the game. We're in the game of business. We're playing the game, or, it's just like anybody in sports. What do they love about football? What do they love about whatever sport they might do? It's a sport. It's a game. I'm not a golfer, and so it's just exciting. It's a challenge. Keeps your brain going.
I think we said, I don't know if it was on the podcast or just before, and I said, you said you work 4 days a week. And my response was, no. You work 7 days a week. And because that brain is always working. And I'm open. Tell me if I'm wrong.
It is.
Yeah. All the quiet moments and the things happening that no one else sees.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What's your style of, do you feel like you have a style of leadership?
Style? You'd have to ask all the ones that work for us. I think trying to be humble, having empathy, taking care of your team. I think that's educating them, helping them grow, promoting from within. I'm a big proponent of that. Women, they rule. Women in your business, I think I learned that early on. We have women in leadership roles in our business. They're just fantastic leaders. They just, the guys, you have to realize it. They're coming on strong.
You know who says that? One of the Shark Tank guys, Kevin O'Leary, says that same thing.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't pick it up from Kevin O'Leary, by the way.
No, I think you probably built it yourself. But if you hear the things you've built and you hear successful people, they leave footprints and they leave receipts. That's the mentorship idea, right? And so all it takes for me is to hear the same thing from just 2 or 3 really successful people. And you have to go, okay, that must be a truth.
Right. Great.
Yeah. This book that you wrote, you had this 40-year pursuit of acquiring the winery that started in 1971.
Yes.
And then you were able to buy it in 2011. Was writing this book, was it a similar path and trajectory of a goal eventually you would?
Well, what my goal was that each year I would write something down that really made a difference, something that stood out during that 1 year in business. And so over a number of years, I would accumulate these one-off lessons. And when I would give a speech like to the Young Presidents Organization, YPO, I could take my 15 lessons and talk about each lesson for 2 or 3 minutes. And hey, that's my 45-minute speech all wrapped up in one. And so I just, I had these lessons. And so the goal was really, let's put them in a book. So they're something to pass on. And I just think it took a number of years to write the book, but I had the lessons, somewhat already prepared, I guess, through my career.
Mm-hmm.
One of the lessons I learned about is just MedJet Assist. Have you ever heard of MedJet Assist?
No, but I don't. I'll say no.
Okay.
Something about it seems familiar, but so no.
Okay, so MedJet Assist is a company that flies you anywhere in the world if you have a medical event on a medical plane. Okay, I learned about that reading in Fortune magazine. I signed up for it. It was $300 a year to have this MedJet Assist. Well, the bottom line of it is when I had my heart problem in California, I needed to fly to St. Louis, and it cost $60,000 on a medical jet. And my son called up MedJet Assist. And they said, "Oh, yeah, Mr. Rubin's all paid up. We'll send a jet and we'll fly you no charge from California to St. Louis." So it's a lesson I learned. That was the most important lesson. So there's a lesson about MedJet Assist. So I had a friend of mine read the book and he said, I never heard of MedJet Assist, but my parents are going over to Japan for vacation. And I just went on MedJet Assist, and I bought the insurance for my parents because it gives me comfort to know, God forbid something happens to them in Japan, I can get them home on MedJet Assist. Thanks, Ron, for telling me about it. And so that's really what a lot of these lessons are about. You won't find them in MBA school, but you'll find them in the book.
What's this crossroads of you being an adjunct professor and believing in education, but the 50 most valuable things that you've found to write down won't be found in those places?
What do you mean they won't be found in those places?
Well, there's 2 or 3 of the lessons that you say are in the book that you say you won't hear these in MBA programs.
Well, you won't, but there are some lessons you probably hear in MBA program,
Yeah, but what about this? What's the crossroad of that? It's not to devalue traditional education, but what's the principle in this?
I think the principle is that it's a book written with somebody's been in there, played the game, is playing the game, is current, and the lessons are from an active person who's really had experience running businesses, not just and there's nothing wrong with professors or teachers or whatever, but true entrepreneurship, and I think that's the value,
Yeah.
Someone's been there, done that.
21 years ago, I found myself in a night class at university here where I'm from, and there was an adjunct business professor, and one comment on one night led me to go obtain my real estate license.
Wow. That's powerful.
And so when you early on said about listening, obviously I listened, right? And then there's the action that you have to take from that.
Mm-hmm.
I think you have to put both together. You have to listen in life, look for the mentors, listen to the people that have the receipts, that have the experience, but then you have to have the fortitude and the desire and the commitment to actually take action to make the thing happen.
Oh, that's correct. No doubt about that.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. As we wrap up,
okay,
I think we're coming to the end of our time. Does this idea of legacy matter to you, or what's it mean, and does it matter, your legacy?
Oh, I don't think about that. I guess it doesn't matter. My name's not on a building. I'd rather help others, help someone along the way.
It's more about what you leave behind, right?
Yeah, and right now it's all about saving lives. So how can we save lives? Teach people CPR, have an automatic external defibrillator. They saved my life. Giving back to causes that help save people's lives.
That's what you do with the other 3 days.
Mm-hmm, that's what I do.
Tell us about, we're also fascinated about these wineries. What makes it special? What you love about your time in Florida? You love walking on the beach. What you love about being at the winery? You love walking the vineyards. What is this about? You love these walks in places. What's that about, Ron?
Well, I ran for 30 years. I was a runner. Okay. So basically from age 30 to age 60. And then I had my ventricular tachycardia right after I ran 20 miles. And then the cardiologist said, Ron, you can't run anymore. And I think the running time, that time just being alone, thinking, just taking in nature, and just it gave me time to think. And I think walking provides the same thing. And then, of course, exercise. I think it's, your responsibility to be in good health if you're leading the team. And so I think the exercise part is great for me. And I'm no longer a runner, I'm a walker.
And you're enjoying every moment.
You bet.
What is this book? It's the most recent thing, but the winery. I mean, where you worked with Ingram on it, but is it also on Audible? Can we listen to it? Is it only read?
It's on Audible. I made an Audible, and we're getting that set up now through Ingram.
Okay.
To be on Amazon. Okay. But you can buy the book on Amazon or at the Republic of Tea.
Okay. Did you read the book? Are you the Audible?
I read the book. Yes, that was quite an experience. It was fun. I enjoyed it.
Tell us about that. That'll be our last wrap up here. But I want to so we can go on Amazon. The Audible will be out soon. The Republic of Tea, you can find everything out about you, and we'll put all the tags. But tell us about the experience.
Well, the experience was that I wanted to read, do the Audible, but at the time that I had to do it, I was in Florida. And so, I'm thinking, that's not going to work because they want me to do it, but I'm in Florida. And so I go to Naples, Florida, and sure enough, right there is gold in my backyard. I find a studio that does audiobooks every day. That's their business in little Naples, Florida. And so for about 3 or 4 weeks, I did my audio right here in Naples, Florida. Got to continue to walk on the beach.
Good. And did you walk to the studio?
I could. It was unbelievable. It was like, there it is, gold in your backyard.
That's awesome. Good. Well, Ron Rubin,
thank you.
I appreciate the time.
Thanks, Mark. Well, thank you very much.
The Republic of Tea. I'm assuming, I looked at Dave, our producer here, when you guys sent this. I went, this has the feel of monthly subscriptions. This has the feel of high-level elite tea drinking.
Great.
Is it, I'm assuming that we can get online and buy subscriptions and not just one-off and receive stuff in the mail consistently. Am I correct about that?
I hope so.
Okay. He's like, somebody else is running it now. Well, hey, this book, I'm pumped. I put my finger in the little slot so I could pull it out, but I know that there's massive care and intention behind it because this hardback, I love. This is a feng shui. It feels like it's the binding is different.
Right.
It's clean. It's so clean in the lines and the gold on top. Just the experience of reading it, I think, is going to be fun. So it's Ron Rubin, Gold in Your Backyard: Lessons in Life, Leadership, and the Power of a Dream.
You betcha.
All right. Hey, thanks for the time.
Thanks, Mark.
I look forward to following you. Hey, if I'm ever in Sonoma, I know a lot of people ask some stuff, but I'll probably try to intrigue you and say, I'm bringing my camera guys. We're coming to do a piece. We want a tour of these walks of the vineyard.
We'd love to have you.
When are you in Sonoma?
From June 1st to November 1st.
June 1st to November 1st.
Yep.
Okay, Sonoma, here we come.
We want you to have a beautiful experience.
Okay. You're awesome. Thank you very much. And again, remind us the name of the winery and the wine.
River Road Family Vineyards and Winery. River Road.
Yep. Thank you for the time. Okay. Enjoy your walks on the beach the rest of the afternoon.
Okay. Thanks, Mark.
All right.
Good time.
Thank you.